Hey guys, Furum here, and today I'm going to be testing the VLF Force 1 V10 in multiplayer in Asphalt 9. I just recently 4-starred this car, so I figured it was a good time to make a video about it in the current Slipstream season. So as I said, I've 4-starred it. I've got top speed to 10 on upgrades. Everything else is at stage 8 because this car is very expensive to upgrade, but speed is the most important thing in this Slipstream season, along with nitro efficiency. I know I might say this a lot, but this is one of the closest and most intense races I have had this season, if not the most. Our main competitor is another Icona, although there are other cars in the race. He is one that we just keep going back and forth with for the entirety of this 2-lap race. It is a bit crazy. So in my previous video, I talked about how it was important to have a car with good top speed and nitro efficiency for this season, so that once you get ahead, you can stay ahead, because if you have good nitro efficiency, you don't have to worry about running out of nitro as much, and thus having people catch up to you, because they have nitro from your slipstream, and you don't. However, something else to consider, and I did not mention this in the previous video, is your starting position at the beginning of a race. So it's very different what you should do, actually, if you start in first or if you start further back. If you start further back, the best thing to do is just to try to pick up as much slipstream as possible from some other people in front of you and shockwave as early as possible to get up to speed. Now, if your car does not have good nitro efficiency, you may not want to get into first position because then there's a big chance that you might get knocked down. But overall, if you're in the back, it's best to shockwave very early. Now, if you're in the front, what you should do is just start drifting early, because what this will do is it will stop the people directly behind you from being able to nitro surf on your slipstream and thus be able to shockwave and possibly knock you down, because you just have the little bit of nitro that you get at the beginning of a race. Instead, this drifting at the beginning of a race allows you to not put a slipstream out behind you, and it also allows you to get up to the point where you can shockwave as well. This is very beneficial if you start in first. Since I've begun doing this, I've had a lot better races from first position. So we are now coming up fairly close to the end of this race, and we are still neck and neck with this Icona that we've been going back and forth with for the entirety of this race. These are the kinds of races that I really do enjoy, and I really wish they'd turned off knockdowns in this season to make races like this happen a bit more often, because too often in duels like these, somebody gets knocked down and it just completely kills the whole thing. Now here I managed to flat spin under him and take the win by that. I'm not exactly sure why my car went faster and went lower than his, but I'm sure glad it did, because that was a great ending to a great race. In this 7-player race, we are facing another VLF, a W Motors Lycan Hypersport, 2 Porsche 918s, a McLaren P1, and a LaFerrari. So you see what I did at the beginning there? I went in their slipstreams as much as possible at the beginning to shockwave as early as possible. The LaFerrari tried to knock me down, and I knew I was not going to make it to the ramp, so I did not even bother trying to go for it. Because I've had too many times this season, and in previous seasons as well, where I've tried to go for a ramp and I've hit like the edge of it, and I've landed on my side and wrecked and lost because of it. I decided it's not worth going for a ramp in that case, where you'd gain maybe half a second, but you risk losing a lot more than that if you wrecked on it. So now we have come into first position. Somehow we have gotten through all that mishmash back there. Now we just have to hold it for the 70% of the race that is left. Now this is the difficult thing. When you've got a Lycan on your tail that is like 20 miles per hour faster than you, because the VLF goes about 235 miles per hour at this rank, I believe, it's difficult because you do not have infinite nitro. The guy behind you, if he's close enough, basically does, because he can follow in your slipstream. If he's 20 miles per hour faster, well, you can see where this is going. Thankfully, the Lycan, which is the car that you see right back there, was not close enough, I believe, to get into my slipstream, because otherwise he would have gotten a lot closer a lot quicker. And thus I was able to stay just far enough ahead of him that he was not really able to get up to his speed enough to be able to catch up to me. Now, however, we have some turns coming up here, and this is where he started to get a bit closer. You see, in these straight sections, he can get up to speed pretty quickly, which is why he's coming up on me, well, pretty quickly. Thankfully, the finish line was right ahead, and we managed to come in first. But that Lycan was not far behind at all. Pay no attention to my rating at the end of this race. So in this race, we are facing a bunch of other cars on Cairo. We have a Fenner, a BC, a couple LaFerraris, and it looks like another VLF. So we get enough shockwave. I tried to knock down the Fenner because I know he's really fast. It doesn't work. Thankfully, he doesn't knock me down either, and thus me and him are now in first and second. Unfortunately, he lands on top of me, and we are put back into, thankfully not last, but fifth place in this case. Now, since I was in the slipstream of somebody, I was able to just stay in shockwave. If you're going right behind somebody and your car has good nitro efficiency, you can do that. And this car's nitro efficiency, while not the best, is, I'd say, at least above average enough so that you can pretty much stay in nitro the whole time if you're in somebody's slipstream, even shockwaving a lot of the time. It allows you to shockwave early to get to ramps. It's nice being in someone's slipstream, which is why if you are in a slower car, it is probably not a good idea to get into first early on in the race, but to pass people later. Because if you just get into first early on, there's a very high chance that they will catch up to you and knock you down and pass you later. This has happened plenty of times to me. So we are now back up to third position, and we have just this other VLF to pass, and that Fenner is basically long gone. There's no way I can catch up to him unless he makes mistakes. Now, I have a 5-star Fenner. I've driven it on this track, and I know exactly how it feels to be in his case. And so the Fenner is definitely another car that I will be making a video about in the Slipstream season. So we come in second. The second lap, we just got further and further ahead of everybody else, and that Fenner got further and further ahead of us. Pay no attention to the car rank of that Fenner. So, you remember how quickly that Lycan caught up to us in the race on Shanghai near the end there? Well, in this race, we've got 3 Lycans against a VLF, all going like 20 miles per hour faster. So my strategy in this race was to try to slipstream some of the Lycans, get ahead on some jumps as I'm doing here, and try to get just far enough ahead that they won't be able to slipstream on me. So 2 of them are down. We've just got 1 to go right behind us. This is Skullback. I believe is somebody who watches my videos, and I've raced him many a time. So it's always a pleasure to race you when I meet you. I do not know what happens here. He flat spins, hits me, somehow I knock him down even though he's going faster. Well, I'm not complaining. So moving on to the second lap, we have another Lycan that is starting to catch up to us. Unfortunately, I did not get the shockwave around that turn, and that allowed him to catch up very close. Now, this is not the same Lycan that we knocked down earlier. This is a different one. This is Up Arrow. Unfortunately, we get hung up against the side here. That happens sometimes. This car has a weird tendency, I've noticed, to do extra flat spins, or 360s, as I guess they're called in this game. I don't exactly know why, but even though I tried to do the drift brake trick whatever to stop doing extra ones upon landing, it still does it, like half the time at least, and I do not exactly know why. We do manage to catch up a little bit closer to this Lycan near the end of the race, however, it was not enough to pull out the victory, and we come in second. Not too far behind though, and quite far ahead of those other 2 Lycans, or Lycans if you prefer to pronounce it that way. Now for the final race in the video. Now in this race we had a bit of weird matchmaking. So many of the cars in the race, I believe 5 of them were in Platinum League, like 1400 rating, which was definitely within 300 of where I am, but still, usually I would get paired with other people in Legend League. And there was one other guy in Legend League who was the Lycan. So we've got a Lycan against Vulcans and F12 TDFs and stuff like that. This should be interesting. So now it's time for, you guessed it, my general review about this car. It is quite a good car. It got buffed in the most recent update. All of its stats got a little bit of an increase, so that is good. It now goes close to the speed of the SCG when it is 5-starred, and the SCG is at 4. Possibly the fastest car in Class A. All of its other stats are pretty good as well, so yeah, this is definitely quite a fun car to drive. Quite a good car this season as well, because as you can see, it doesn't do too shabbily against cars like the Lycan and the Fenner. Well, the Fenner is a bit harder to beat, but against the Lycan it can do okay, as shown in this race, and this other Lycan did not manage to catch up throughout the entirety of the rest of the race. The second lap passes uneventfully, and we come in first position. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like the video if you've enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more Asphalt 8 and 9 content. And I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!